And welcome to the Danville Town Council meeting. We will begin shortly.
It's 5.
We'll wait for Marie to let us know that we are recording, and we will begin.
Take it over, Mayor.
Good evening and welcome. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Tuesday, January 12th, 2012 special meeting of the Town Council. On behalf of the entire council, welcome to our meeting this evening. At this time, I would like to go ahead and ask our city clerk, Marie Sunseri, to do the roll call, please.
Yes. Councilmember Fong.
Here.
Councilmember Stepper. I see she's here. I believe she's on mute, but yes, she's here.
She's here.
Here. Sorry.
Okay. Councilmember Storer.
Here.
Vice Mayor Arnerich.
Here.
And Mayor Morgan.
I am here.
And it's noted that all council members are present in attendance.
Great. Item 1.2 are announcements. Are there any announcements?
Yes, the meeting is being held this evening on Zoom, and a recording of this meeting will be made available on the website following the meeting. And to provide live comments during the meeting, we are asking the attendees to use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. And when the mayor opens the item up to public comment, your name will be announced and your audio enabled, and you're asked to state your name for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Those are all of the announcements.
Thank you for that. I'd like to go ahead. We always like to honor our country. And at this point, we'd like to go to item number 2, which is the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. And I'd like to ask Councilmember Storer to lead us in the pledge this evening.
Well, thank you very much. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
And I want everybody to know that we told him that he would probably do that. And because of that, we kind of painted that for him and made him do that. But otherwise, you do an excellent job, Councilmember Storer. All right. Are there any changes to the order of the agenda this evening? All right. Seeing none, let's go ahead and move on to item number 4. Item number 4 is for the good of the town. These are items that are routine in nature. Excuse me, I'm on the wrong part. So the good of the town, we'd like to know if there's anybody that's here this evening that would like to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda this evening.
And I don't see any hands raised, so there are no speakers for the good of the town.
Wonderful. Okay, we'll go ahead and go to item number 5, which is now our consent calendar. These are items that are routine in nature and can be voted on at one time. Is there anybody from the council that would like to see an item removed? Is there anybody from the public that has written in asking to have an item removed?
I see no public request for removal.
Okay, so bring it back to the council.
I'll make a motion that we approve items 5.1 to 5.8.
Okay, I have a first. If anybody cares, I'm sorry. Karen, did you say something?
Well, I made the motion.
Right. No, I saw that. So we have a first
I
by
didn't heard.
Councilmember Stepper and a second by Councilmember Storer. The roll call, please.
Yes. Councilmember Fong,
Aye.
Councilmember Stepper,
Aye.
Councilmember Storer,
Yes,
Vice Mayor Arnerich,
Yes.
Mayor Morgan.
Yes.
The consent calendar was approved unanimously.
Okay, one of the items that we look forward to on a monthly basis is our town manager's report by Joe Calabrigo.
All right, well, thank you, Mayor Morgan, members of the town council. You caught me a little off guard there. Got to me quicker than I expected. I'm going to start my report this evening by providing council with a COVID update. And I'm going to preface this update by, for those that might be viewing this or viewing it subsequent to this evening, preface it by saying that there are a number of different government agencies that are involved at this point in the pandemic response. And while it's a coordinated response, we've got federal, state, local agencies that are all playing separate roles. And I want to talk about this a little bit because we get a lot of email, I think, from folks that would like to see us be able to affect outcomes in areas that aren't necessarily those that fall under our purview. So we'll start with the state and the governor. They have the authority to impose statewide shelter-in-place orders, to mobilize resources, to direct state and federal funds. The state is right now leading the process to roll out the COVID vaccine. They just set, I think, as of yesterday or today, a goal of vaccinating 1 million people in the next 10 days. At a local level, we've got our county health services department. We've got our San Ramon Valley Unified School District, our fire district, San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District, and the town. And each of those agencies are all playing different roles. So Contra Costa Health and our health officer is responsible for health orders, for coordinating testing, now coordinating the effort to vaccinate all 1.1 million residents in Contra Costa County, including those that live in the 19 cities in the unincorporated area. Our school district, of course, has oversight of over 30,000 students, 33 school sites, covering grades K through 12. So they're tasked with continuing to educate our children, providing educational resources for the kids themselves, and working with the teachers, administrators, and staff that are required to support that effort. Our fire district is also our emergency medical service EMS provider here in the San Ramon Valley. They've been on the front lines of the pandemic, responding to calls, transporting many of those who have been infected by the virus when they're transported to hospitals. And I expect to see them very involved with the distribution of the vaccine. And last but not least, the town has been tasked with assisting implementation of the various health orders, with educating and informing our community, with enforcement of the health order, supporting our local businesses and residents, and adjusting our town services to make sure that we're complying with the health order, as well as instituting steps to keep our small workforce safe. So while we're in continuous communication, each agency has its own set of responsibilities. The current regional stay-at-home order, as you're aware, is being driven by available ICU capacity in hospitals throughout the state. The current order is slated to be lifted when each of the regions in the state are able to achieve 4-week ICU projections that show a capacity of at least 15%. Right now, statewide, I'm told it's pretty close to zero. In Contra Costa County, it's hovering around 3%. As of today, when we look at the number of new cases per 100,000 of population, we have 51 new cases per day in Contra Costa County, with a testing positivity rate of 10.7%. So when people say to me, how far away are we from getting back to the red tier? There are 3 ways to register to measure that. One is getting back to ICU capacity of 15% or more in the hospitals. The other is we should be at 7 new cases per 100,000 or less And right now we're at 7 times that with a positivity rate of less than 8%. And right now we're closer to 11. November and December saw a significant surge in the number of new cases that we are experiencing here in Danville. To put it into perspective, at the end of October, we had 24 new cases within the last 14 days. And by December 14th, that number had swelled to 216. As of today, the 12th, we have 147 new cases within the last 14 days, 1,164 cases total, with 15 deaths here in Contra Costa, or here in Danville, which, based on our population size, represents about the proportionate number that you would expect based on the total number in Contra Costa. So using the new cases per 100,000 of population, as of today, the state's at 91.7, Contra Costa County is at 51, and Danville is at 23.7, which relative to the other cities in Contra Costa County places us in, I'll refer to it as 5th position. There are 4 cities that are doing better than Danville and 14 that are doing worse. What we know from talking to the folks at County Health is that the trajectory of the virus transmission here is essentially mirroring what we're seeing elsewhere in the county and throughout the state. So positivity rate is going up because, in addition to increased availability of testing, many more people have contracted the virus, which in turn is accelerating the spread. So it makes sense. More than 50% of the cases are being caused by people who are asymptomatic and they don't realize that they have the virus. We are being told by County Health that they're expecting a post-Christmas New Year's surge by next week, and they expect that to be worse than the post-Thanksgiving surge. Last week, when I, along with all of the other city managers in the county, had an opportunity to meet via Zoom with County Health Director Anna Roth and Dr. Chris Farnatano, our health officer, to get a COVID status report, most of the conversation was focused on the rollout of the vaccine and the vaccine status in Contra Costa County. So for those folks who haven't seen it, the County Health Services website has now been updated to include a whole page, a whole section on the vaccine and the vaccine rollout. And there's a lot of excellent information there for those who may not have seen it. I would encourage folks to visit that website. The vaccine is going to be distributed in 4 phases that are referred to as 1A, 1B, 1C, and 2. We're currently in phase 1A, which includes vaccinating in the neighborhood of 20 to 25,000 healthcare workers, residents, employees of long-term care facilities in the county. Phase 1B, which could start somewhere in the second half of the month on out to the beginning of February, is going to include frontline essential workers, people aged 65 and older, others who are living in congregate care facilities. There's a whole list. There are about 300,000 people that are scheduled to be vaccinated under phase 1B in Contra Costa County. Phase 1C is going to include most of the rest of us, ages 50 to 65, or ages 16 to 64 if you have a pre-existing medical condition. It'll also include other essential workers, including government sector. And then that'll be followed by phase 2, which is essentially everyone else. And we expect to get to phase 2 probably in the second half of the calendar year. The vaccine right now is being received in limited doses. However, the health department does expect to receive a regular flow of both the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines. Both vaccines, you may be aware, use RNA technology that prompts our cells to produce antibodies that protect from the virus. Both are highly effective. We're told people shouldn't be concerned about whether they receive one or the other. They're both administered in 2 separate doses. Both have about 95% efficiency. And the doses are received 3 weeks apart. So in this county, when you receive the first dose, you're going to be registered to be contacted so that you can receive the second dose as well. The vaccine's being administered through our County Health Services Department, as well as through John Muir Hospital, San Ramon Regional. Both CVS and Rite Aid have contracts with the state, and they're also administering the vaccine following the same phasing protocol. The health department is telling us that right now, the limiting factors, of course, are the supply of the vaccine, but in addition to that, being able to mobilize enough appropriately trained people to be able to administer the vaccine. So there's a big push on that, a big focus on that within the next couple of weeks. The immediate goal in Contra Costa County is to vaccinate the most exposed, vulnerable members of the population as soon as possible, so that we can drive down the case numbers, increase our ICU capacity back up above 15%, and begin to get businesses reopened as soon as possible. We, the town, are continuing to do everything that we can to monitor and ensure compliance with the current shelter-in-place standing health order. Any citizens who observe a perceived violation are encouraged to contact our police department and to make a report. Depending on the information that is reported, we will take an appropriate course of action that could include education, could include enforcement. Sort of shifting over on into economic development and the various ways that the town has been supporting and advocating for our town businesses. You all continue to receive the weekly business updates from Liana Adauto. We are continuing to provide assistance and support to our businesses as we have throughout the pandemic, and it includes really everything from information and education to assisting them with securing funding, providing outdoor no-cost use permits for outdoor seating or outdoor conducting of commerce, depending upon the use and the nature of the business. A major initiative of the towns has been our Forward Focus Grant Program. We've been able to assist retail, restaurants, and personal service businesses through 2 phases of this program so far that have included the council appropriating $525,000 in funding. Just last month on the 18th, you approved the 2nd phase of the program. The grants are being structured based on a menu of options that support individual business needs as well as recovery efforts. To date, we've received 95 applications and provided 78 grants under phase 1. And so far, we've received 30 applications and provided 17 grants under the 2nd phase. And so far in phase 2, we have committed about 20% of that 2nd phase of funding, that $275,000 funding appropriation that you made just last month. So plenty more still to do there, and availability for businesses that might be watching or interested. So when we combine the Forward Focus Grant Program with all of the other initiatives that have been rolled out through economic development, the town to date has committed $875,000 to supporting our businesses. We're also currently offering a new business assistance program that provides one-on-one support to business owners, trying to assist them in applying for state relief funds, along with the next round of emergency insurance disaster loan and payroll protection program funds. We're using Towns and Public Affairs to assist us with that. We held an orientation workshop on the program last Friday. We had 65 businesses that registered for that. And we have so far 39 businesses that have signed on for the one-on-one assistance. Council also passed an urgency ordinance that established a temporary maximum cap on the commissions, fees, and costs that can be charged by third-party food delivery services on our local restaurants. And that went into effect at the end of last year. And I'll just say that Jill and her staff are continuing to do a great job of working with and assisting individual businesses, working with our Danville Area Chamber of Commerce. We're continuing to put out community messages that are seeking to offer support and encouragement and urging our residents to support local businesses by buying and shopping locally as well. As January 1 has come along, we have passed the midpoint in our 2020-21 fiscal year. We're continuing to very carefully track our finances to monitor the pandemic-related budget impacts. Recall that our budget and fund transfers were reduced by $5 million for the 2021 fiscal year, with some uncertainty as to whether or not additional cuts or adjustments would be required. Now that we've arrived at the midpoint in the year, we do look to be meeting and exceeding our forecasts. On the general fund side, our property tax and sales tax numbers are actually at or ahead of where we were this time last year. Recreation fees and charges are significantly behind, and in fact, look to fall significantly short of the revised budget estimates for the year, as we're not emerging from the pandemic as quickly as we had hoped. On the special revenue side, our gas tax and building and planning revenues are tracking ahead of last year. The staffing and expenditure cuts that have been made have resulted in significant budget reductions, and I am expecting that our expenditures will stay within the budget. And overall, our actual numbers are looking as though they will outperform the forecast, and we won't be looking to make any additional cuts. So you'll be getting a full mid-year report beginning of next month, and you'll get all of this in greater detail. On the legislative front, our legislative committee last met on December 22nd. We reviewed our legislative framework, made some tweaks, got some highlights. The new legislative session, we expect the legislature is going to continue to intensify their efforts to promote housing development and affordability. They're going to do that by imposing additional requirements on local governments. The Senate Pro Tem, Tony Atkins in particular, is expected to reintroduce some of the housing bills that didn't have time to get passed last session. And they're continuing to see pressure from private coalitions and the state legislature to get more over into what has traditionally been local control. On the HCD and on the RENA side, that process, we're continuing to strategize on how to best move forward with the current RENA process. That'll be a significant topic that the council will be talking about at your annual workshop coming up next month. As everyone knows at this point, ABAG is looking to increase the housing numbers that are assigned to Danville very significantly, fourfold from the last cycle, from about 550 to about 2,200 units, really being driven by more of a social equity emphasis that appears to be focused on driving more housing out into the periphery of the Bay Area and frankly punishing some of the suburbs, especially some of the more affluent suburbs. Switching over to police, you're going to get your annual report from the chief coming up in the spring, but I'll steal a little bit of his thunder and tell you that we did finish 2020 with another new low in Part 1 crime. The pandemic does enter into that equation to some extent because the pandemic and the shelter-in-place orders are having an impact on the types of crime that we're seeing. For example, while thefts are down, burglaries and robberies are actually up a bit. Traffic accidents are down. The chief is going to be presenting, like I said, his annual report in the not too distant future. He's also continuing to do his weekly 10/8 podcast as a way to reach out into the community, keep the community informed on the latest things that are going on in the police department. We were talking just recently, yesterday, in fact, about the new Flock ALPR system that has been implemented here in town, and how well it is working as a deterrent and also assisting us in solving crimes. The beauty of the system, one of the nice features of the system is that Danville and San Ramon are now utilizing the same system, and so there's compatibility and the opportunity there for us to team and work together even better than before. And earlier today, I sent the council an update that describes some of the personnel changes that are going to be coming in our police department with the next upcoming shift change. So if you haven't seen that, please take a look at it. In development services, want to touch on the capital improvement program and some of the things that we've got going on. Our storm drain master plan still in the works. We are working on an inventory and condition assessment phase that we think is going to be completed within the next few weeks. The trash rack project that we've been working on for the Westridge, Loch Lomond, and Starview locations, we're still doing a bit of a dance with our friends at FEMA on this. We have responded to their most recent round of questions before the furlough. We hope to hear back from them as soon as next month regarding next steps. At Hat McGee Ranch Park, we're preparing bid documents for the gazebo replacement. Going to be going out to bid on that in the next few weeks. The Diablo Road Trail project, we have the topo information back that we've been waiting on. We're working on a preliminary alignment and project limits description so that we can start the environmental phase of that project. And we should have the environmental consultant by the end of the month, have them on board. Our new footbridge from across San Ramon Valley Creek between the Trammell Crow project and the Danville Town Green. The construction is well underway. The bridge is about 40% complete. The abutments have been constructed. The bridge is in the process of being fabricated, and it's scheduled to be installed next month. Once installed, it should take another month or so to complete that project. So by early spring, that bridge should be there. And our park and ride expansion, that project is going to go out to bid by the end of this month. So we'll be moving forward with that. On the transportation front, the traffic school bus program, the operations continue to be on standby pending the resumption of some on-site learning at our schools. All of the drivers have been retained. They're going to be ready to serve all of the routes once the school year resumes on site. Work's continuing on the new bike master plan, currently developing projects and recommendations and a wayfinding signage plan element. We've got our second public workshop scheduled for February 17th, and we expect to have a final draft of the plan in late March, going to hearing for adoption in April and May. We're continuing to pursue grant opportunities for transportation projects with a focus on the Diablo Road Trail. The TDA application for the Diablo Road Fairway Drive crossing was on your agenda earlier this evening. And work is continuing as we look to continue to upgrade our aging lighted crosswalk systems here. So the next two projects the next two locations that are going to receive upgrades are going to be Diablo Road and Arroyo Drive, which serves Vista Grande School, and on Lagonda Way, which serves St. Isidore's. Very briefly in maintenance, the furlough went well. No rain, no storm, no call outs. Great news for our maintenance staff. Not so great for our water usage. We've talked about that previously and how that's looking from a budget standpoint, and still really no significant rain in the forecast. The sports field moratorium is ongoing and will run through March 1. We've been busy at Osage Park, trimming trees, addressing some vandalism that unfortunately occurred over the furlough. The annual rose pruning is going to occur later this month, as will a town-wide pruning of crepe myrtle trees. Our Sports Alliance folks have approached the town and will be approaching our Parks Commission. They're looking at options to see if they can upgrade and further expand the sports field lighting at Diablo Vista Park by lighting the one field out there that isn't lit. And, staff has been working on identifying and repairing lighting issues at Sycamore Valley Park and the tennis courts at Monte Vista High School. So I'll wrap up with Recreation, Arts, and Community Services. We're doing what we can to find creative options to deliver service in keeping with health orders that seem to shift back and forth. We get to the point where we're ready to reopen our facilities and do some things, and then unfortunately we're not able to do that. So the winter activity guide is online. We're highlighting all of the classes, programs, special events. Staff has prepared contingency plans for how we can provide service moving forward, and we're continuing to do online registration for the available programs, events, and classes that we have. Rec staff has also been working to assist our economic development team. As recently as last month, they were involved with the tree trail, decorated holiday trees downtown. They're working with our Senior Advisory Commission to develop their roadmap to an age-friendly Danville. And our Parks, Recreation, and Arts Commission is continuing to look at ways to implement the Town Green Master Plan and how to best accommodate additional multi-generational activities. So that concludes my report. Appreciate council's attention, and I'm happy to try to respond to any questions you might have.
Thank you, Joe, for that really thorough report, and good news, bad news, and in between. We really appreciate it. Newell?
Joe, I just want to pass along a compliment. I was able Friday to help a couple of businesses, local businesses. I sat in for the entire presentation that Jill and Liana ran with Townsend Associates. I tell you what, it was probably one of the best I've seen. Incredibly knowledgeable for the individual. He knew particularly on the state grant, which is complicated. And as many of our businesses know, we only have till midnight tomorrow night for the state grant program, which is anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000. And it looks like the majority of businesses in Danville would be eligible for those. There's paperwork, but it is an online process. And I think with the guidance that at least I got to help a couple of businesses, it was incredibly helpful and put together in such a short period of time. And, coupled with our more than $500,000 towards local grants to our businesses, I'm really proud of the staff, partnership with the chamber, and everything, and the council that we've all gotten, our money where our mouth is and feet in the street to make things happen. So really just a huge compliment to the economic development team and everybody that supported them.
Really, really appreciate that, Newell, because as you can appreciate, Jill Bergman and her team spent some time in the week that we were shut down during the furlough getting geared up and ready for that. And the folks at Townsend are very, very knowledgeable. I sat through that workshop as well and just sort of observed and listened to some of the questions. And I feel very positive about the way that we're going to be able to assist some of our businesses with that.
Robert?
Great. Thank you, Joe. As always, we really do appreciate your report. And I'll also pass on to you that a number of the businesses that probably many of us talk to downtown that are struggling and going through a very difficult time have said to me, maybe to many of you, hey, thank the town of Danville for returning our phone calls, giving us information, telling us where we are in this COVID process, and helping us get some of these grants that in a lot of cases are helping salvage some of our businesses. And that's a communication level that not every community has. And I'm really proud of the fact that we're communicating at a council level, at a staff level, town manager, the police chief. You know, everybody's on the street talking to our businesses and helping them get over these, you know, extraordinary challenging times. So, you know, that's a big deal, and that's a very nice compliment to hear. So I appreciate that, and thank you.
Are there any other, Karen?
Oh, yeah. Just wanted to tell you, I think that we're having a great partnership again with the Chamber of Commerce, which is what you're reflecting on your report, Joe, with the numbers that showed up yesterday. I remember that Judy Lloyd, the new CEO, said there were 28 people had signed up ahead and like 33 people added to it. And maybe that number's not quite correct. The point is that the more people we have to reach out to our businesses, the better. And I know that the staff here has just been amazing at reaching out to them, but I'm glad that the chamber's quite involved. It's an important part of the process. So thank you for the report. Great job.
Karen, thank you. I was remiss in not mentioning the chamber. What an unbelievable partnership.
And kudos to Judy Lloyd, who's really had to hit the ground running on this and has done so.
But if anybody could, it would be Judy Lloyd.
Okay, anybody else? We'll go ahead and move on then. Thank you once again, Joe. Let's go ahead and move on then to another report that we like to receive, which is on item number 7 is our informational staff reports. At this, public comment is also invited. So if we do get anything, Marie will let us know. Item 7.1 is our quarterly investment report with Chandler Asset Management. And I believe we have Jenny here today. Welcome.
Okay, thank you so much, Mayor Morgan. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Okay, can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, fabulous.
Yeah.
So good evening, honorable mayor, council members and staff. Happy New Year to everyone. I want to thank you for inviting Chandler Asset Management to present the town of Danville's December 31st quarterly investment report. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jenny Linkowitz. I'm a senior portfolio manager at Chandler. And I usually start out by providing a brief economic update to give a backdrop of what's been going on and how that impacts the portfolio. So after we saw a really strong bounce back in the third quarter of 2020, as the economy started to adapt and to reopen this summer, and also supported by fiscal stimulus from the CARES Act, we're seeing the pace of recovery actually start to slow at this point, partly due to the delay in the fiscal stimulus and also due to the fall and post-holiday surge that we saw in COVID cases that has led to more restrictions in the economy, and it started to slow things down. So despite the difficult time that we're in, the $900 billion phase 4 stimulus package that was just passed, we believe will help the economy in the near term. And while the results of the Georgia runoff elections also increase the probability for another larger fiscal stimulus package in the future, along with possible infrastructure spending as well. So we could see that have an impact on the US economy, and we'll look for that. And though the vaccine rollout has been slower than expected in many states, we believe that as a larger percentage of the population continues to get vaccinated, and as time goes by, that's going to further boost the most hard-hit segments of the U.S. economy, such as leisure and hospitality, which we have a large amount of exposure to here in the state of California. So in addition to that, we also have support coming from the Federal Reserve, and they're showing no signs of letting up at all. They're keeping their support in place with short-term rates anchored firmly at 0. And they're also continuing to purchase assets. We saw a number of their asset purchase programs expire at the end of the year that were purchasing things like corporate bonds and municipal bonds. But they are still continuing support in terms of purchasing $80 billion of US treasuries every month and at least $40 billion of US agency mortgages every month. So they can use that to help control longer term interest rates as well. And they have more tools at their disposal if they want to implement yield curve control, which would control interest rates on, for example, the 10-year treasury could be anchored at a lower level than it is today. So they still have some additional tools in their toolbox, and we expect them to remain extremely accommodative as long as the employment picture remains really challenged. You know, we're still seeing elevated levels of unemployment. The non-farm payroll number report for December came out, and it was negative for the first time since April, slightly negative by negative 140,000. But we did see the unemployment rate remain steady at about 6.7% nationwide. The underemployment rate was sitting at about 11.7% for December. The state of California has slightly higher unemployment, sitting at 8.2%. That's a little bit lagged, so it's as of November. And about 46% of the jobs that were lost in March and April have been gained back. The Bay Area has actually fared pretty well at this point. We're looking at about 6.1% unemployment for November. But I do want to point out that this doesn't consider all the people who've dropped out of the workforce, either because of fear of catching COVID or because they've had to stay home and provide childcare. So there's a fair amount of people. We're still down over 10 million jobs. So taking a look at jobless claims for unemployment in the market, out in the economy, the jobless claims are measured by the green bars, and that's sitting at about 790,000 jobs, 790,000 claims every week. And we've had, the most recent report isn't on here, but we're looking at continuing claims, which is the gray line on the top, sitting at a little bit over 5 million continuing claims. So we're starting to see long-term unemployment become more of an issue. Another thing that the Fed is looking at is the impact to prices. So we've seen, when the pandemic broke out at first, we saw a pretty big drop in prices, particularly in the energy prices. But the CPI, which is the main measure of inflation that many of you are probably familiar with, the green line here has been sitting at about 1.2% for the last couple of months. Bay Area CPI is really close to that, sitting about 1.1%. But the Fed really likes to look at the personal consumption expenditures, the core PCE, and that also excludes the volatile food and energy sectors. So that's been sitting at about 1.4% for October, November, but we're still well below the Fed's 2% target. And we could see this actually get higher because we're going to be coming off of very low base rates as we approach March and April of this year. So we could see this get as high as 2.5% or 3%, but the Fed expects that to be transitory, and they're expected to allow inflation to run hot if that does happen. So they're also looking at how the consumer has been doing and the retail sector. So, this is really important. The U.S. economy is so retail driven. And so retail sales make up about a third of consumption expenditures in GDP. So we've seen them be pretty strong. Retail sales are up about 4.1% year over year for November, but they were down month over month. So we've seen that decline a little bit and take a little bit of a hit as we saw COVID cases go up. But I think it's noteworthy that we saw non-store retailers were up 29% year over year. So that number has just continued to get larger and larger as more people order things online. And food and drinking places were down 17% nationwide year over year. So of course, as they were required to close indoor dining in a lot of places, that had a huge impact. Then consumer confidence is a survey that comes out, and that has dropped as well, as there was a delay in fiscal stimulus and COVID cases, were surging in December. So that was sitting at 88.6. And so that's sitting now well below the long run average of 95. So the consumer is feeling a little bit less confident right now. Economic activity is starting to, is a little bit lagged here, actually. We're looking at LEI year over year is down 2.2%. So that's still, showing moderation in the growth level. And then the Chicago Fed National Activity Index is a broader index. The 3-month moving average of positive 0.53 suggests that we're slowing down, but we're still seeing above average rates of growth right now, off of very low levels, of course. So then the housing market is still continuing to be strong. We've got housing starts, we're up 13% year over year. And this was largely driven by single family homes that were started. So that's up about 27% year over year versus multifamilies, which were down about 18% year over year. So we're seeing less of those. The Case-Shiller home price index is up about 8% year over year. So that continues to be extremely strong. The Bay Area has a comparable rate of growth as well. Manufacturing is also a recovering story here. We saw ISM manufacturing increase to 60.7 in December. So we're firmly in expansion territory there. So that's that's great news. They've really been helped by the weaker US dollar. So that's helped make our goods more competitive overseas. And then industrial production has been recovering, is still below pre-pandemic levels, down about 5.5% year over year for November. And then capacity utilization is only 73% versus 80% is what we would normally see on a long run average. So we still have a lot of slack in the manufacturing sector. And then GDP measures all of these things. So you can see we had record negative GDP in the second quarter of negative 31% annualized. And that was followed by a record positive 33%. So although the 33% positive was better than expected on a non-annualized basis, this was still down negative 2.8% year over year. And we're expecting a positive 4.6% in the fourth quarter, which equates to about negative 2.4% year over year. So to look at this, to simplify this, to look at all of 2020, we're expecting about negative 3.5% GDP growth for the previous year. And then for 2021, we're expecting a positive 4% growth. So we think that a lot of this is going to be in the second half of 2021 as the economy really starts to recover. But there's some encouraging signs here. I mean, personal consumption expenditures has come way back. But I do want to point out that 2/3 of this number is services, which have been really negatively impacted. And the US economy really relies a lot on services. But we have seen a really strong comeback in gross private domestic investment. So we're seeing companies actually invest in capital expenditures. So that's an area that had been kind of stagnant for a long time. And that's really starting to come back. So it's showing that companies are hopeful for the future. So that's very encouraging. And then we just have a couple more slides just looking at the broad economic picture. The Federal Reserve is purchasing all these bonds. So we're seeing their balance sheet balloon up to about $7.3 billion. And then of course, the chart on the right shows the Fed funds rate, which dropped by 150 basis points in March. So we're all the way down to between 0.25% right now. And then bond yields have been tumbling over the past couple of years, as all of you people who invest in CDs and things like that and bonds are probably well aware. We have seen longer rates kind of creep up recently. So we've seen a little steeper yield curve, but we are looking at pretty low rates. I mean, just looking at my screen right now, the 2-year Treasury is yielding 0.14%. The 5-year Treasury is yielding about 0.5%. And then the 10-year Treasury is yielding at 1.1%. So still pretty low levels overall. But we're starting to see over the last few days, rates start to pop up a little bit, sort of as the result of some of the fiscal stimulus that was announced and things like that. So taking a look at the account that we manage for the town of Danville, our priorities when we're managing these funds are always safety first, liquidity second, and yield is our third consideration after those first two objectives have been met. We manage on a total return basis, the portfolio versus the Bank of America 1 to 3 year US Treasury index. So the focus is 1 to 3 year bonds, and many of them are government bonds. So we purchase securities that meet the requirements of the town's investment policy and also California law. So we have a report that shows that the town's investments were in line with California code and with the investment policy as of the end of the year, 12/31. And just to let you know, we also have a Bloomberg compliance system that monitors all of our trades on a pre and post trade basis. And we also have a dedicated compliance staff that monitors the portfolio as well to make sure that everything is in compliance at all times. So this slide has a dashboard that shows the characteristics of the portfolio and what it looks like. And it compares it to last quarter on the right here. The center column is the 12/31 portfolio information. And then on the left, we've got the benchmark comparison. So we'll take a look at that. So duration is a measure of interest rate risk. So we're looking at about 1.79. So we're sitting at about 98% of the benchmark duration. So our target is to be very close to neutral, somewhere between 95 and 100%, I would say. So as of 12/31, we were sitting at about 98%. We've seen the purchase yield drift down a little bit as we've had investments mature off and we've been purchasing bonds at lower yields. So we're seeing it go from about 1.78% to 1.68%. But that still looks very attractive. We have a lot of investments locked in that we purchased over the last few years. So if you look at investment like LAIF, for example, it has an average life of about 6 months, whereas the town's portfolio has an average life of about 1.9 years. So it's been more resilient. You know, LAIF has dropped down to a daily yield of about 0.48, and the town's portfolio is still sitting about 1.68%. So that stands up pretty well. The market yield is what the type of yield we would get if we were to purchase these bonds, the exact same portfolio today. So that's sitting at 0.18%. The difference here is made up in unrealized gains in the portfolio. So the unrealized gains as of December 31st were about $1.6 million. So that's the difference there. The average quality is very high quality. So it's one notch below the highest level of AAA. So we're sitting at a high AA level. So we've managed to, you know, keep everything high quality despite the most recent crisis. And then the total market value has increased by about $105,000. So it's sitting at about $71.8 million as of the end of December. Then looking at the sectors that we're investing in, there haven't been major changes from September on the right, and we've got December 31st on the left. About 77% of the portfolio is invested in US government securities. So that makes up, treasuries are about 21%. Agencies are a sector that we've added to a little bit. That's at about 56%. We saw a lot of issuance out of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac as they were calling bonds over the course of the quarter when interest rates dropped. So we've been able to get some, find some relative value in that sector. Corporate bonds are high quality, investment grade, rated single A or higher. And so that's about 15%. That stayed steady. We haven't added to that sector, but we're going to look for some opportunities this quarter as some of those Fed programs started to roll off. And we get some issuance this year that could present some opportunities. So we'll be on the lookout for that. So we added to supranationals a little bit. That's institutions such as World Bank. That's about 3.5% of the portfolio. And then we've got high quality AAA asset-backed securities. These are mostly issued by backed by auto loans. So those have actually performed very well. We've been monitoring delinquencies and they've been extremely low. So there haven't been any issues with those whatsoever. And they actually held up really well during the financial crisis as well. So, and then cash is about 1%. So that's a pretty small, we try to keep that at a minimum at all times. Then we have a list of issuers for you that shows the diversification in the portfolio. And you can see most of the portfolio is government, treasuries, and agencies. And then the highest, the largest exposure to a single corporation is Apple. That's a very highly rated company. It's done very well in the crisis, and it's sitting at about 2.2%. But in general, we invest in high quality securities. We monitor them very carefully, and we want to keep this diversified across industries and individual companies, so we don't have too many eggs in one basket. But we don't have any direct exposure to the really hard hit industries such as travel and leisure. So that's important to note. That's not really in our investable universe due to the ratings anyways. So the duration distribution hasn't changed much. We've seen a little bit of roll down over the course of the quarter, but you can see it's mostly focused on 1 to 3 years, which is our mandate. And then the historical purchase yield has been gradually declining. So it's sitting at about 1.68 right now, 1.68%. And then we've got the growth of $1 million over time on slide number 22. And this is an interesting slide. The green line on the top shows the total return, invested over time. So this has been over a nearly 26-year span. So that would have so $1 million turned into about 2.55 million with an annualized total return of 3.7% over that time frame. The realized return, is just taking into consideration just securities that are maturing and if anything is sold, which we don't typically sell very many securities in this portfolio. But if there were realized gains or realized losses, those would be incorporated there. But this is largely a buy and hold portfolio. So that's not something that we're mostly just holding to maturity. And then the LAIF comparison shows that the annualized return would have been about 2.7%. So that's that orange line on the bottom. So you can see that that you've got about $550,000 of added value over that time for each million. And then we have an investment performance report that shows the total return this is really how we're measured. So the benchmark performance is the gray bar, and the Danville portfolio performance is the dark green bar. And so this is incorporating both interest income that's been earned and also realized and unrealized gains and losses. So we've seen some really nice gains over the last couple of years as interest rates have been falling. But here again, we've got a 3.7% annualized return for the portfolio versus the benchmark of 3.45. So that's about 0.25% per year annualized difference. And then over the last couple of years, we've seen total returns north of 3% on an annualized basis. So about 3.47% over the last 2 years annualized. And over the last year, it's returned about 3.18%. So that's the result of falling rates and some of the unrealized gains that have accrued in the portfolio. Okay, then we have another, Chandler manages another portfolio for the Neried Improvement Fund. And so this is a much shorter strategy, and we're investing in only government securities here. So the duration is about 0.6 of a year, very short. So you've seen that purchase yield drop pretty fast. So it's sitting at 13 basis points, 0.13%. Last quarter, it was 0.7%. So that's come down pretty fast. It's got a really high credit quality, all AAA, all government. And then the total market value is about $865,000. And so this just shows that it's invested entirely in currently in US Treasuries and a little bit of money market fund as well. So the remainder of the presentation just consists of holdings and transactions. So that concludes my presentation. I look forward to all your questions.
Jenny, thank you so much. If you would mind unsharing your screen so we can see everybody.
Sure. That'd be great.
Thank you.
See if I can do that.
Are there any questions right now while she's waiting to unshare the screen and I don't see you?
Yeah, Renee, I'll have a question. It's Robert.
Okay, go ahead, Robert. There you go, Jenny. Thank you.
Jenny, thank you for this presentation. Can we go back to page 7 on your report and looking at consumer confidence?
Sure. Let me go back.
So I made you go out of it. And now you have to go back into it.
No, it's okay. Yeah, let me share it one more time here.
No, I appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
No problem.
So I see where you're talking about retail sales declining, and I see we're talking about service revenue, comprises about 2/3 of this, but there's got to be more that goes into consumer confidence because, construction, home remodeling is up, housing is strong, car sales seem to be at record highs, real estate sales are at record at highs, and it seems like people are still spending money. Doesn't that contribute to consumer confidence as well?
Well, so that's interesting because consumer confidence is really just a survey. So it doesn't really consist of hard data at all. It's actually the Nielsen company that goes out and does surveys about what kind of television programs you're watching. They also ask people questions about how they're feeling about their economic prospects, et cetera. So it's an extremely, we saw this really recover when the first fiscal stimulus came out and then come back down. And now, and then when there was hope for more stimulus, it would come back up. And then it went back down again. So this is just, it kind of blows with the wind. And it's something that we look at because it's important in terms of how people are feeling because that causes them to spend money or not. And then that impacts retail sales, which is about 1/3 of the personal consumption expenditures. So retail sales have actually held in there really well. We've seen a lot of people take their money that they would have spent on services and they're spending it on things like goods for their home, for example, sporting goods. People are doing a lot of outdoor activities and things like that. So some of this transition that we've seen and what's kept retail sales so strong has been people adapting to the stay-at-home economy and really changing some of their spending habits. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens when the economy, when people are vaccinated and the economy reopens. We'll be watching that very closely, but I think there's potential for some pretty strong growth as services come back online.
It would have seemed like it because the world is certainly very complicated today, but when you talk to many people, it seems like they're still confident enough to go out and buy a vehicle or buy a home or remodel their kitchen. It seems like people are spending a little bit of money. So this is not numbers driven. It's more conversation with people.
Exactly. It's more of a survey. But you're right. People are spending a lot of money on home remodeling because when you spend all day at your house, you start looking around and thinking, well, should I redo my kitchen or something like that? So we've been seeing a lot of that, and it's really been encouraging. And companies that focus on that type of construction workers have been extremely busy. People that do home remodeling have been busy. So those sectors of the economy are really booming right now. And so it's sort of a tale of two cities. You've got the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah, I would also, here's a question that's a little bit out of left field. Bitcoin phenomena. How do you see it working its way into the economy? And I know people have wrapped their arms around this now, and it certainly has, increased in value over the last couple of months. Where do you see it going?
Well, I mean, I see there's really nothing backing Bitcoin. I mean, when you talk about US dollars or, other currencies, you've got taxing power of governments behind that. And Bitcoin doesn't have any of that. So I don't see a bright future for Bitcoin. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I think that in the long run, it's not going to be a money generating investment. I mean, it doesn't pay any dividends. It doesn't have anything behind it. So I think at the end of the, I can't say what's going to happen in the near term because it's obviously been going up and down and been pretty volatile and gone pretty high recently to $40,000. But I would caution anyone strongly about investing in that in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
Newell?
Thank you.
Yeah, Jenny, thank you. It's always a pleasure to hear your words in describing our portfolio, how Chandler has managed it for over 26 years. It makes us all sleep really well through every major crisis. You've been through the downturn of the dot-com bust in the late 90s, 9/11 and the economics of that, a Great Recession, COVID. I mean, you name it, you've been there to help us, and our portfolio has remained incredibly stable. When we look forward, you mentioned a little bit about corporates and the opportunity. Obviously, those are our highest returns, but they have a risk, and that's why we limit the portfolio as to what percentage we can carry. We're between 2% and almost up to 3.25% with Toyota. Given the low cost of funds that are out there, what do you predict this spring for corporate notes? There's a wave coming out, a lot of refinancings. Do you expect that to be going down? And what do you think about the creditworthiness? Is that going to be good, bad, or neutral?
Yeah, so that's a great question as well. So we saw about $1.85 trillion of corporate investment grade corporate bond issuance in 2020. So that was a record by far. And this year we're expecting less than that, about 1.2 trillion, which is still a pretty big number, but it's not nearly what we had last year. So all these companies have gone out there and taken advantage of favorable market conditions to refinance their balance sheets. And so a lot of companies have a lot of cash on hand. But I have to say we're still not out of the woods, and we still have to be extremely careful about corporate credit because there's a lot of damage that's been done by the pandemic, and it could still continue to have a hangover effect over time. So we're watching these companies very carefully. A lot of the companies we invest in, like Walmart and Apple, have been doing fine, and the auto industry has recovered, not 100%, but people are buying cars to go on vacation and to drive to work when they don't want to take the bus anymore. So the auto industry has seen a pretty high resurgence. So that's encouraging. But we're going to continue to look for opportunities, but we're also not going to, invest in something that, if we're still concerned about the prospects for the industry.
And the last quick question I had, do you see, with the LIBOR rate going away finally, and, the market's sort of absorbed knowing where it's headed, I don't see anything in our portfolio that's going to be affected by that change. Is that fair to say that?
It's fair to say that. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. We've seen LIBOR, they've extended the deadline, for it to go away until 2023. So mid 2023. So that's something that's been postponed. And part of the reason for that is they haven't really been able to find an acceptable substitute. I mean, SOFR, the structured overnight funding rate is not really, it doesn't have a credit component, and it doesn't have a term component. Most people that invest in LIBOR-based products are investing off of 3-month LIBOR, for example, because they want that term component and they want the credit component as well. So the overnight rates that are investing in government repo or mimicking a government repo rate don't really replace LIBOR. So they've given people more time once again to adapt to something else.
It's like Brexit.
Yeah, exactly. They're kicking
happen
it
one
down
day.
the road because they don't really have when they decided to eliminate LIBOR, there really wasn't another replacement for it. So it'll be interesting to see what the end game is with that. But the town's investments do not have. We don't tend to buy floating rate securities that would tend to be benchmarked off of LIBOR. So there's no direct impact to the town's portfolio as a result of LIBOR being sunsetted.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other questions of council? Okay, if we could go back to the full screen again, that would be
There's Karen.
fabulous.
So I'm just.
Oh, I'm
I'm
sorry, I can't see you, Karen. Thank you. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't know that. I can see everything, so apologize.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having trouble unsharing my screen for some reason.
Oh, I see. You're covering. I got it. Okay.
Yeah, now I
Yeah,
can see. Now I can see everybody.
No,
There we go.
Jenny, this gross net domestic product, it only goes through September, and
Right.
swings are enormous. I don't remember them ever being that large. I mean,
Never
minus
been that large.
24% for June and then plus 25% for November. I mean, that's 50% change. Do we have any idea what December is going to look like? Are you getting preliminary numbers? Because
Yeah, so they're
that's
thinking
that first line, personal consumption expenditures. This is the chart on page 11.
Yeah, so personal consumption expenditures, that's what people are spending. That was the number that we were talking about that is about consisting about a third of retail sales and about 2/3 of services. So it's by far the largest component of GDP, and it's the most important one that we really want to look at. So as far as estimates for the fourth quarter, we're expecting about a positive 4.6%. So we're seeing the rate of growth start to level off, especially as, in the fourth quarter of 2020, we obviously saw, a resurgence in the number of COVID cases, and economies start to shut back down again a little bit, partial lockdowns in certain parts of the country that were most heavily impacted. Up in the Midwest, where it started to get really cold, they saw a lot of a big uptick in cases. But I do want to point out that the positive 4.6%, it's still reflective of a negative 2.4% year over year. So, the 4.6% is annualized, the 33% is annualized. If you look at it year over year, it's still lower because we're recovering from a lower number. But you're right, the 33%, and those numbers are numbers that we haven't seen. Even the Great Depression didn't have anything that dramatic because it happened more over time. This could be the sharpest recession in history, really. And we officially entered a recession back in February, and we're still waiting to hear whether we're actually still in the recession or if we're starting to recover out of it.
I'm surprised that it's going back to what it was for the normal part of the year, which was the negative 0.4. But I'm surprised that that it would go that high and then fall that much. But I guess that's the closing of the economy. So that's what I hear you.
Yeah, I mean, the whole year is even though it looks like it came back to even, it actually still was negative if you don't look at it on an annualized basis. So for the whole course of the year, we're looking at negative 3.5% for 2020. But then for 2021, on an aggregate basis, we're hoping to see about 4%. So we're looking to be positive again next year, but it's still going to take more than that to get back to even to where we were. We're still going to need to grow more to make up for the difference.
All right. Thank you, Jenny, very much for your report. Very helpful.
Robert, did you have a follow-up question? Did I see?
I do. It's more of a comment, and a lot of us do this when we do our budgets, and certainly when Chandler comes to our meetings and explains to us, that we're doing a pretty good job managing our money. I think this town of Danville is run really well, thanks to Joe Calabrigo and Chandler and Investment. I mean, we balance our budgets. We don't spend more than we make. We actually put money away for a rainy day. I mean, we don't have unfunded liabilities. We have manageable debt that we can pay our bills with. And, because of Joe Calabrigo and Chandler Financial, thank you for, Newell mentioned it as well. We say this a lot. We sleep at night because we do all the right things financially. We don't have financial issues, and that's a big deal. A lot of jurisdictions cannot say that, and I can proudly sit here and say, we've done all the right things thanks to our town manager, thanks to Lonnie High, thanks to you, Jenny, that help us be comfortable with our finances. So thank you very much. Well
Thank
done.
you.
Nicely
Are
done.
there any other questions or comments? Jenny, thank you so much for your presentation this evening. We so appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you next quarter, hopefully with some
Yeah.
much better news.
Sounds great. Hopefully we'll have good news for you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you for joining us this evening.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Jenny.
Okay, I'd like to go on to item number 8, which is our town council reports. And before I start this, I'd like to say that the town council has spent numerous hours interviewing. We had 34 applicants apply for 15 spots. And may I say that out of those 34, every single one of them was so talented, and we were so honored to have them apply for the commissions in the seats that we have available. But as you know, we can only select so many. We wanted to, if we could grow our commissions and have every single person join, we would. But unfortunately, that's just not in the books right now. So what we'd like to do is go ahead and start with our appointment to the Senior Advisory Commission. And I have Newell Arnrich.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan. My pleasure to announce 2 appointments, Dr. Steve Freshman and David Grant.
Okay, so I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion first and a second. Marie, would you mind doing the roll call?
Yes. Councilmember Fong,
Aye.
Councilmember Stepper,
Aye.
Councilmember Storer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Arnerich,
Yes.
and Mayor Morgan.
Yes. Okay, motion carries.
Unanimously.
All right. Item 8.2 is to appoint to Parks, Recreation, and the Arts Commission. Councilmember Storer.
Thank you. You know, as a council, I think we had to make one of our most difficult decisions today, filling these 2 seats with 11 applicants. So my hope would be that if I don't mention your name, I would hope you would continue volunteering in our community at some capacity, either with the town or volunteering in the community itself. But these 2 individuals that interviewed today shared their vision for the town with such a great deal of passion and energy, high-level park users, and we certainly appreciate all of their wonderful ideas. They're going to contribute as young families into the park system. And this year, at this time, we would like to congratulate Commissioners Jenny Messick and Commissioner Adam Falcon. Both of them did an incredible job today. Welcome each of you to the town of Danville, and we all look forward to working with you.
Great. So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Marie, would you mind doing the roll call?
Yes, and this is to appoint Jenna Messick and Adam Falcon to the Parks, Recreation, and Arts Commission. Councilmember Fong,
Aye.
Councilmember Stepper,
Aye.
Councilmember Storer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Arnerich,
Yes.
and Mayor Morgan.
Yes.
The item was approved unanimously.
Great. Item 8.3 is appoint to the Heritage Resource Commission, 3 members for terms ending on December 31st, 2024. And I have Councilmember Stepper.
Yes, this is Heritage Resource was really great for the interviews because people just emphasize again that the legacy of the town and the history of the town is your history. If you stay in Danville long enough and you plan to stay, this becomes your family's legacy as well. So we're proud to reappoint Lee Halverson and Catherine Benvenito.
Great. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Matter of fact.
Second.
I have a first and a second to Marie. Would you mind doing the roll call?
Yes, and this is to appoint Catherine Benvenuto and Lee Halverson to the Heritage Resource Commission. I know that the item was to appoint 3 members. I'll just note that there is an open position for a licensed architect on the Heritage Resource Commission. Councilmember Fong,
Aye.
Councilmember Stepper,
Aye.
Councilmember Storer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Arnerich,
Yes.
and Mayor Morgan.
Yes.
Approved unanimously.
Item 8.4 is to appoint the Planning Commission 4 regular members and 1 alternate member for terms ending on December 31st, 2024. Councilmember Fong.
Yes, on behalf of the Danville Town Council, I'd like to congratulate the following individuals for their appointment onto the Planning Commission for the 4-year term ending 12/31/2024. Mark Graham, Paul Radich, Lou Palandrani, Mary Grace Houlihan, and as an alternate, Robert Ficken. We wish each of you the best of success representing the town of Danville.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second.
Okay. Councilmember Fong,
Aye.
Councilmember Stepper,
Yes.
Councilmember Storer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Arnerich,
Yes.
and Mayor Morgan.
Yes.
Approved unanimously.
And I'd also like to mention that we had the additional availability on the Senior Commission due to a change from Senior Commission to the Planning Commission. Therefore, we were able to appoint an additional person to the Senior Commission, the Senior Advisory Council, so Commission. 8.5 is to appoint the Design Review Board, and that would be Vice Mayor Arnerich.
I thank you, Mayor Morgan. We have one position available, and I, on behalf of the council, nominate Afshan Hamid, who is a planter and an architect.
Second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Marie?
Yes. Councilmember Fong,
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper,
Yes.
Councilmember Storer,
Yes.
Mayor Arnerich, Vice Mayor Arnerich,
Yes.
Mayor Morgan.
There's 2 of us, yes.
Approved unanimously.
8.6 is to appoint a Contra Costa County Advisory Council on the Aging, and that would be Councilmember Storer.
Mayor, thank you. This individual has been very special to the town of Danville. He's always at our senior center, always cooks for our seniors, drives our seniors to their appointment, participates on delivering meals to seniors. He's someone with compassion and empathy towards our senior community and just simply does an incredible job. Jim Donnelly has been working tirelessly over the years at literally every level of senior help. He tries his best to create new environments, new work, new activities. And I want to congratulate on behalf of this council, Jim Donnelly. I believe he's going to be, I think it's the chair or the president of the committee next year on the Council on Aging in Contra Costa County. What an honor for the town of Danville to have Jim Donnelly sitting in that seat.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Marie?
Yes. Councilmember Fong,
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper,
Yes.
Councilmember Storer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Arnerich,
Yes.
and Mayor Morgan.
Yes.
Approved unanimously.
Item 8.7 to appoint a Contra Costa Mosquito and Vector Control District Board of Trustees. That would be Councilmember Stepper.
We're always pleased to have Randall Diamond reapply because there's been big changes in that agency this year, and we're pleased to have the succession and the consistency and the enthusiasm of Randall Diamond, and I so move his appointment to December 31st, 2024.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Marie?
Yes. Councilmember Fong,
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper,
Yes.
Councilmember Storer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Arnerich,
Yes.
and Mayor Morgan.
Yes.
Approved unanimously.
Item 8.8 is to appoint to the Contra Costa County Library Commission. Councilmember Fong.
Yes. As important as our Danville Library is to the community, it is so even more important that we have representation at the Contra Costa County level. So I would like to recommend that Nicole Gimmer as our Danville representative to the Contra Costa County Library Commission, and wish the best of success.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Marie?
Yes. Councilmember Fong,
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper,
Yes.
Councilmember Storer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Arnerich,
Yes.
and Mayor Morgan.
Yes.
Approved unanimously.
Great. Congratulations to all of our new commissioners and our different commissions and different advisories at the different levels. We wish you much success, and we know that you will be as well. We also encourage any of the other applicants that have placed their application in there, that there are more opportunities coming up in the near future, to please stay tuned and to be sure to reapply for those positions once they come available. Item 8.9 are town council updates. Are there any updates from the council at this time?
Nope.
Okay, well, seeing none, I'd like to go ahead and thank everybody for being here this evening, but I would also like to mention that part of our report today from our town manager, Joe Calabrigo, was in reference to COVID. And I think a lot of times, I shouldn't say I think, I know a lot of times that it's the situation has been looked at as it's possibly not as serious as it is. And then when we have a situation like we recently had in Danville, we realize that the situation can be deadly. We would like to close this meeting tonight in memory of Ken Sandy, Danville's first police chief, who passed away on December 24th as a result of the COVID virus. Please remember to stay safe, be positive, and test negative. And on that,
Mayor,
yes.
can we also close the meeting in honor of Tom Garino, who died on Christmas Eve of the same?
Well,
same
I
cause?
was going to
Sorry.
close our next meeting on that. I wanted to honor our first police chief on that, but if you would like to go ahead and add that as well, I'm happy to do that. I just wanted to give the entire meeting to our first police chief, since he was a Danville resident as well as our first police chief. But I'm happy to include him. It wasn't that he was remiss, it was just that we wanted to make sure that we were honoring our first police chief with a complete meeting. So
Well done.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Like I said, stay safe and test negative. We'll see you soon. This meeting's adjourned.
Good job, Mayor.
Good job, Mayor.